Now when we talk about adding detail to a painting, how much to add, what to take out, where we want the detail, where we don't want it, it all starts with composing the picture first. Because if I take in too much from a photograph, then I'm going to have too much detail everywhere. So I want to narrow down the composition to just what's important. Again, spend some time doing this, whether you're using a sketchbook, which I always used and I still do, where I will zoom in the photograph. You can also do this on the computer, either with Photoshop, or if you don't have Photoshop, they have some free Photoshop-like programs on the internet where you can crop, zoom in, do all kinds of things for free. But you can do this same thing. So my interest is kind of right in here. I like the barn. Decide what it is you took the picture for. Or if you see a picture you're borrowing, what it is you like about the picture. I like the barn, the fence that's in shadow against the sunlit background, and some of these trees and foliage. So if I crop that out, then I'm left with what's just important. And that's pretty interesting. I like that. If I want to get more, decide that's too little, again, just do this 3 or 4 times where you slowly pull out maybe a little more of that fence, a little more of the trunks over here, a little more of the foreground. You have a larger area now, a little more interest. You're pulling out more. And you also want to be able to zoom around. In other words, if I crop, maybe I want to move the focal point over a little bit. Not as much sky, not as much foreground. Make it a little longer. Then I can also zoom in this way, pull in and pull out. But a lot of different ways to deal with it. It really helps you get away from the photograph, which is the whole idea of not just copying the photograph, find a better composition. But I've zoomed in a little bit, but I wanted the trunks, I wanted some of the fence, the tree, to where the fence and the tree trunks are actually more of the focal point. And then maybe the barn, because I like this clutter in here, so, which is some detail. I want to handle this detail, and I want to be able to handle it where it still holds together as a solid shape, but with enough detail to make it somewhat more finished. And the detail is going to be combining 2 things. The small dark and light value changes like we see in this fence area, dark light, dark light, dark light for all the in between the fence, that's detail. Same thing in the grass, all these little darks and lights combined together, same thing in here, a lot of detail. And I want to be able to get rid of most of it, decide the few areas I want it, and then even still where I have it, I want to pull it together into more of a solid shape. So if I see 40 little darks and lights in these fences, I might want to paint 10 or 15. It's kind of like sky holes. When I look at the sky holes, you might see 50 in here, but you want to show maybe 5 or 6. So detail is always reduced. And detail is technically little dark and light value changes. The more dark and light value changes you have, the more broken up it gets value-wise. And it also starts to fall apart. So that's the important thing, is how to eliminate detail. When we talk about how to paint it, it's more about how to eliminate it than it is to actually paint it. The other aspect of detail is broken color. That's the same value, like the grass in here, the light grass. I want the same value of the grass, but a different color. So it's not a value change. It doesn't read as detail, but dark and light changes. It's a detail with just color change, not value change. That works a lot better, and I'll have more of that than I will have of the value change detail. But this is how I want to see the painting when I start out, and I want to, before I can even think about detail, I want to be able to see this in large dark and light patterns. The darks kind of hold together, starting on the left side, the tree, the shape of this dark winds into this shape, winds into the shape down here, and the trunks, the grass. And it makes kind of a circular composition. All the darks, I want them to be connected at least a little bit. If not, your eye makes the jump. The viewer's eye makes the jump between the darks. But that holds the painting together. And the same thing with the lights. They're what's left, basically. I can have different colors of light and different values of light, but they're all on the light side. Same thing, the shadow. I've got about 3 values of shadow, but they're all within the shadow. I don't want any shadow areas that are too light that you can't tell whether they're part of the light area or dark. They have to hold together. So when I block in the painting, in the drawing stage, that's what I'm looking for, is that large dark pattern, how to construct it on the canvas, keep it together. Then when I start adding color, still keeping it separate from the light. I'm not blending values, I'm blending values within the shadow, but not between dark and light. Then the last stage of where we're finishing, adding detail, broken color, then I'm blending a little bit. I'm softening some edges. But I always want to separate, especially with this much sunlight, separate the dark and light. This is how I want to see it, and this is how I want to block it in. And this is not copying the photograph, this is changing the photograph. And that's what's important about working from photographic reference, is the goal is to change it, to simplify it, and then come back and slowly re-add some of the detail, but decide where I want to. And I want the detail to be pretty much where my focal areas. This fence area, which I don't really have the fences in there, fence area here, and then some of the barn. That's going to be my focal point.